Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host Brett Murphy, and for today's video I have another brand new movie review for you all. And I am going to be reviewing Elvis. So Elvis is of course the biopic based on the life of the one and only Elvis Presley. And given that he is one of the biggest stars to have ever lived, it's safe to say that the stakes were pretty high for Director Bay Luhrmann and his team. So with that in mind, the question remains, does it deliver? Well, as always folks, of course, we're about to find out. And as always with my new movie reviews, this will be 110% spoiler free. So if you have not yet seen Elvis, or if you're watching this review to see if it's right for you, you can proceed with confidence. Before I hop into the actual review itself, I just wanted to let you all know that I have an entire playlist dedicated to all of my new movie reviews. So be sure to check that out, and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And so without further ado, let's hop right into things. First up on my positives list, and I am so thankful I am able to say this, it's Austin Butler as Elvis. He completely and utterly disappears into the role. It is totally mesmerizing. The word perfect is thrown around a little too loosely nowadays, even occasionally by me. But this time I say it and I really do mean it. This was the perfect casting choice. When they first announced this and the last thing that the guy was in was a small role in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I really didn't know. But once that first trailer dropped, I felt I was definitely going to be proven wrong, and now that I've seen the movie, I was absolutely proven wrong. And I really do feel that he should be nominated for all of the major awards this coming season. If people didn't yet know his name, they're going to now. But next up on the positives list is his right-hand man throughout the entire movie, Tom Hanks. In this, he plays Colonel Tom Parker, and he gives a phenomenal performance, as expected. I mean, even the odd time that Tom Hanks is in a bad movie, no one can ever say that he gives a bad performance. But he completely transforms into someone else. My girlfriend said after the movie there were multiple times that she completely forgot it was even Tom Hanks to begin with, and she had to remind herself. Which actually is a nice segue into my next point, and that is the makeup in this movie. Both the makeup and prosthetic work done on Tom Hanks as well as Austin Butler. It is honestly some of the best work I have seen in recent memory. And paired with the exceptional makeup work is some magnificent costume design. Not just the 50s, 60s, and 70s attire, but all of Elvis's outfits. They're extravagant, colorful, vibrant, over the top, and the costume department just nailed it here. I didn't really plan on making this one a bonus, and maybe it's just me, but I simply adore the aesthetic from the 50s, 60s, and some of the 70s era. And I think that's something they absolutely crushed here. Again, I already mentioned the costumes, like the attire and stuff, but the cars and the buildings and the neon signs, the music, all of it. Actually, speaking of the music, that's my next positive. But let me be very clear, I mean the Elvis stuff. The hardcore Elvis stuff it's Elvis Presley. I mean, come on. There are some remixes of his songs in here, either sung by different people or it's, got some beats and stuff like that in it. That stuff is fine. However, in typical Bay Luhrmann fashion, there is a lot of modern music spliced in here as well. Didn't care much for that stuff, but the Elvis stuff, it just rocks. If you're a fan of Elvis like me, then you're really going to enjoy that aspect of this movie, because I dug it. I also wanted to mention the rest of the supporting cast, like Olivia de Jong as Priscilla Presley. Not only does she look a lot alike her, but her acting is excellent. And then you have plenty of other people too, like Elvis's mother and father, who were great, as well as the vast majority of his crew that were in and out of the movie. There really was no bad standout performances or any weak links anywhere to be found. And the last positive I wanted to address was the way they approached the story here. It's not really a retelling of Elvis's life from start to finish, but more so a look at his career, from when he was first discovered until he sadly and very tragically passed away at the age of 42. Although we do get brief glimpses of his childhood and other home stuff and behind the scene things, it's more so a really deep dive peek behind the curtain of his career. And I personally felt that that was the right choice for this story. And now for my negatives for this movie. This movie, based on its trailer alone, had me unbelievably hyped, but sadly there are a few negatives that I definitely need to address. Firstly is that this movie is way too long. Maybe it's not the length, because there were a lot of good things in here in terms of the story, and some of my other complaints that you will hear in a moment are things that I feel should have been in here. So maybe it was the pacing. I don't know. You'll decide for yourself if you felt that the movie itself was just too long or the pacing was just too slow, but I definitely was checking my watch more than once in this movie. So although I enjoyed myself for the most part, it definitely drags at points. The next part that I wanted to address is, honestly, I call it the over-editing, but I really just think it's Baz Luhrmann's style. Because if you've seen a Baz Luhrmann movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The man has a very, very distinct style of his own. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Even in this movie, there are times that it works and times that it doesn't. For me personally, something like The Great Gatsby, which he also did, his style worked very well for that story. But it only worked a small portion of the time in this movie. There's just a lot of over-editing, okay? There's a ton of graphics on the screen at all times. There's really weird transitions, really weird camera angles, a lot of quick cuts, a lot of shifting. It's just really like in your face a lot of the time, and I kind of wish we just got more of a straight up biopic rather than parts of this movie kind of just feeling like non-stop montages. I don't know, this is another thing that's going to be it's going to be a personal choice, because again, some people really, really like his style, and other people really don't like his style. I'm in the middle. Again, I think sometimes it really works, sometimes it really doesn't, and there are definitely portions of this movie where I felt it really didn't. And the last negative that I have for this movie is that I felt the story did skip out on a lot of the darker, more mature and interesting stuff. Again, it more so just looks at his career rather than the inner workings. There are, again, lots of behind-the-scenes stuff and home life stuff, and that's great. But I'm talking about the far more serious stuff. It kind of just glosses over his drug addiction and doesn't really dive too deep into that. It doesn't really dissect or jump too much into the relationship he has with his daughter, the falling out of his marriage with Priscilla, and the movie preaches a lot about how Colonel Tom Parker really kind of had Elvis in this like financial grip hold, this lockdown, had him in a cage because of all the financial stuff going on, but we don't actually get to see or know a whole lot about that. So there are just elements in here with Elvis's personal life that I really wish we got a deeper dive into that just wasn't really there. At the end of the day, Elvis ended up being a bit more of a mixed bag than I was personally hoping for. I have been a really big fan of these recent musical biopics. I loved Rocket Man, I loved Bohemian Rhapsody. They were some of my favorite movies of those years, and I was hoping to say the same for Elvis. And as it currently stands, I'm somewhere in the middle on it. Definitely more positive, because I really did enjoy the movie as a whole, and there were elements I loved. But there were also definitely elements that I didn't care much for and elements I just didn't like. But a lot of those negatives are definitely very subjective. It's going to come down to if you like Luhrmann's style, if you felt the movie was too long, if you thought it was just right, if you didn't need a deeper dive into Elvis's more personal life and the darker side of his story. If you don't have a problem with any of those things, then you might love this movie. But for me, at the end of the day, I am going to be giving Elvis a 7.5 out of 10. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my review. While you're at it, be sure to let me know what you would have scored Elvis out of 10. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more content, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing that little bell icon. That way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, stay safe. Thank you so much for watching, and that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you, and while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.